Hello, everyone. This is Sheila Huggins. Welcome again to our Are You Fit to Be a Politician series. We are here in Durham, North Carolina at Millennium Sports Club. Again, thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Sam, for letting us use this space. And so today I have with me Rebecca Edwards from Wake County, and she is running for one of the judicial seats. And let me back up, because if you saw the previous video with the Court of Appeals candidates and with Anita Earls, who's running for Supreme Court, then you know my whole big deal is hashtag Judge Love. So I'm showing our judges some love, and that's why I'm here with another judicial candidate. So I'm gonna let Rebecca introduce herself. Tell us a little bit about, tell us where you're from.
Well, thanks, Sheila. I really appreciate you having me, and I'm excited to do this. And I do love the hashtag. It's awesome. So just for folks who don't know, maybe I'm running for district court in Wake County, and that is the courtroom or the level of the courts where most people are going to be if they end up interacting with our justice system. So this is things like traffic tickets, DWIs, custody disputes, child support cases. This is 9 times out of 10 where people are going to have an interaction with our justice system. And my philosophy about that is that there's no second chance to make a first impression, and that's going to be the place where most people get a view of what our justice system is and how they're treated. So I practice in family court as a family law attorney, and so it's really important to me not only to help facilitate a positive impression with our justice system, but also to be sure that I'm part of a system that treats everyone with respect and equally, and that we are not making decisions based on bias or prejudice, but that we are really making sure that our system applies our laws uniformly, and that we actually do what Lady Justice is blindfolded, right? And so I didn't answer your question though. Where am I from? So I live in Cary. Okay. Actually, I've lived there for probably about 20 years.
Okay.
Or so. I went to undergrad at UNC, and then I went to Campbell, downtown Raleigh, for law school. So this is home for me. This is my community. This is where I live, work, play. So this is a really important race to me, and I'm hoping to be able to serve.
Great, glad to hear that. So here's the question I'm going to ask though. So you've been in the area for a while, you've been practicing family law, and it's just like you just said, you're talking about a court where people's first impressions are made, and then there's so much at stake, okay? And you understand that coming
Absolutely.
From family law. So tell me why now, why this race?
Sure, that's a great question, because the truth is I really wasn't planning to do this. I don't know if I'm supposed to admit that or not, but I decided to run because this is a seat that was made vacant when our governor appointed the judge that was in that seat, Judge Keith Gregory, to Superior Court. And that happened around the middle of the year. And so with that vacancy, the members of the bar, lawyers in Wake County, held a special election to make recommendations to Governor Cooper about possibly filling that vacancy by appointment. So I was fortunate enough to be able to receive the highest vote in that election, and have been on the governor's desk as a consideration for appointment. He's been a little busy this year with a couple of things, including a hurricane, so as he should be.
Yes.
But in the meantime, this is something that I decided to do because members of my community, professional acquaintances, colleagues, volunteer colleagues, some of the judges that I know and practice in front of, lots of people came to me to say, hey, we need you and we think that you should run. And I at first kind of thought, who are you talking to? Get with me. But at the end of the day, I really gave it some consideration because some people that I really respect and really value their opinion were asking me to run, and so I decided to do that. So I'm in with 2 feet, my whole heart at this point.
There you go. There you go.
And my husband is very patient with me because this is a tough process running for public office.
So let me backtrack for just a second, because you said something I didn't know, and probably something our viewers didn't know either. And so I understand the process a little bit because I'm an attorney too, and we actually just sort of went through the same process when we had a judicial seat that was vacated, and that was Judge Marcia Mori, who went to the legislature. And so we did the very same thing. As attorneys, you know, we looked at the candidates, asked questions, you know, and really looked at the experience and what the needs were for the community and the court system. And so out of that process comes a recommendation that goes to the governor.
Correct.
And the governor is, as you said, you know, rightly so, focused on Florence and the consequences of that. And so it does take a while for things to make it through to get his approval. And so yes, we've seen that here in Durham County too, but just to get people to sort of understand that you've been practicing for a while and that you were a part of that process too.
Yeah, and I think it's something that the public voter probably wants to know, that that fellow attorneys, people that I practice with, people that know me professionally and seen my work, understand, you know, that I value integrity, what I stand for, that, you know, I'm an attorney who is going to do what I say and say what I mean. And that to me was a really great vote of confidence from my fellow attorneys in the bar. So I was very grateful to get that vote.
That's a lot of work.
It was.
So what's you know, it's a big deal to run for public office.
Yes, I am learning.
So what do you think is your main sort of issue that, you know, when even when you were just considering it and thinking about it, because at some point in time you have to go from just considering it and thinking about it to, like you said, putting both feet and whole heart in, and this is really why I'm running.
Sure, absolutely. I feel so passionate about this, so I'm really glad to get the chance to talk about this. I have really two reasons that collide in why I really decided this is something that I need to do and I need to do now. One is that this has a lot to do with my childhood and my upbringing and the experiences that I've gone through as a person, being someone who experienced a lot of trauma, abuse, neglect, and was one of the kids that should have been someone our system is designed to help. And I fell through the cracks. I was one of those kids who did not get the help and services that our court system and child protective services should have been there to help with. I'm not bitter about that. I just say I want the opportunity to make a difference that one person can make as much as I can. To say, you know, not on my watch. We're not going to have bias and prejudice and judging a book by its cover and making decisions based on anything but the facts and the law applied evenly to everyone. And we're not going to let kids slip through the cracks, and we're not going to let people who come to court and don't you know, look the way that we think they should have an outcome that's not what's correct. So that's really important to me. And then of course practicing, you know, day in and day out in district court, you know, I've seen what our court system looks like on an everyday basis, and the judges work very hard, and we have a ton of backlog. We've got a very big caseload in Wake County, particularly in family court, and you know, I have a real passion to work efficiently. I'm a very hard worker. It's a blessing and a curse to be able to make a difference. And really, when I was talking with colleagues and friends about this, it was you know, wanting to broaden the circle of how I could have some impact on my community, because, you know, as an attorney, there's only so many cases we can take at a time.
Right.
But there's a chance and an opportunity to make a big difference in so many more people's lives when you have the ability to serve from the bench. And so that really was sort of the final push that said, you know, my heart's telling me I need to do this. So.
Good. So are there any challenges that you've seen in the court system that, you know, you've sort of said, I mean, yes, I have my reasons for running, but here are also some ways I'm thinking that I can personally make a difference?
Sure. I think so. I practice family law, and I've also been a volunteer, an attorney advocate, and a guardian ad litem advocate for abuse, neglect, dependency cases where Child Protective Services or Wake County Human Services has taken children and placed them in foster care because of something that's going on in the home. And I've probably done that for 9 years, something in that range. I really actually should count it. But that to me, seeing some things that go on in those courtrooms, like I said, we have a lot of people who work very hard, and I'm not faulting anyone in particular. I just think that our system can always be improved,
right.
And I see things that I've been able to make a difference on as a zealous advocate, and I also see that we again do have a really big backlog, and the frustration that it causes litigants and the attorneys who represent them to have to come back to court multiple times, continuances, all those sorts of things. I'm not saying I can fix it, but I sure want to have a chance to do my part. So
yeah.
Definitely.
So you mentioned the Guardian Ad Litem program and some other things, and you talked about your own sort of personal experience that sort of brought you along this path. But has, during any of those representations, or has there been this one sort of thing that sort of stuck with you and has sort of left an impression on you?
Yeah, it's hard to narrow down just one, actually.
I'm sure.
And without talking about case specifics necessarily, there have been some really difficult domestic violence cases I've been involved in. There have been some really heartbreaking custody cases that I've been involved in. I have seen the front lines of the opioid crisis that we have going on right now. I've represented people dealing with that, dealing with being a spouse of someone who's dealing with that. And have had a client even who died earlier this year from opioids, and so those things are tragic and heartbreaking. Right. And again, I don't have all the answers, but I do feel strongly about the fact that those are the least of us that need us as the community and the legal community to be able to step in and say, the legal world is one part, but we need wraparound services. We need the community. We need people on the bench who are willing to think outside the box. And yes, we must apply the law, and we must do that in an unbiased, uniform way. But we can still think about things as alternatives to, what alternatives are available to us for, criminal offenses, nonviolent first-time offenders, things of that nature that we could try to stop the school to prison, and just all those sorts of things. So interceding when people are young, and then just making a difference to say every case that comes in front of you, it might be another case to you, but it's somebody's life.
That's right.
And never ever forgetting that is so important to me.
That's right.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your interest.
So from a professional standpoint and a personal standpoint, I think those really merge together.
We got a tree. Yeah.
We timed that well. We'll start that one again.
Yeah, let's give that a minute. And typically it comes through in the morning.
Maybe there's an afternoon one.
Yeah, because I'm never here in the afternoon. All right, so tell us a little bit about your interest.
So thanks. I really enjoy things that often collide the two worlds of professional and sort of personal interests, which has been a really good thing. I've been very passionate about volunteer work. That's really important to me. Giving back is an integral part of who I am. So we talked about the Guardian Ad Litem program. That's one of the things that I've made a point to continue to be involved in year after year, because even though some people will say to me, gosh, isn't that hard? It's depressing. It's, to me, that's why it's so important to be involved, because you have a chance to make a difference for one kid or 3 kids. And that's just, you can look yourself in the mirror and say, however small, I made a difference in someone's life. So that's been a really big part of my volunteer efforts and what I like to do in free time. I'm also a really big animal lover, I have a dog, and one of my personal sort of causes is hopes to continue to fight the battle with ending animal cruelty. I don't get a chance to do as much hands-on as I'd like, but one of the things that's been important to me is just making sure that I'm trying to support organizations that do. But yeah, I'm a big softie when it comes to animals. And I joke with my sister has a Doberman, and he's my favorite nephew.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I don't have any other nephews, so it's okay. I only have nieces. But and then, you know, I enjoy some typical things. My husband and I really like to garden, to work out in the yard. Enjoying social activities out with friends, girls' nights, just enjoying company with good friends. And we have so many events that go on in our city and our town, so it's really fun to be engaged with.
It's growing so much.
It is. Downtown Cary is exploding in a good way. It's really fun.
I actually lived in Cary for a little while.
Yeah? Oh, really?
So yeah, my sister was at Central, and I had just finished at State, and I was working in downtown Raleigh, and I sort of relived off of Harrison Avenue.
Yeah, so, I live off of Harrison Avenue.
There
right
you
there.
go.
That's where we are.
Yep, small world.
Yep, I totally agree. It's a very convenient location, but I really enjoy that area. So,
yeah. So, tell me a little bit about, you know, moving into the position. So, do you have? So, for instance, you know, your family law now. If you were to be elected, what would be some of the things you would say, here are some things I think we need to look at, considering what kind of options or alternatives there might be able to do to tackle some of these issues a different way, or build upon some of the things that are already being done?
Sure. Well, I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure how much sway I will have as one person, particularly at the beginning, because I'm sure I have to establish myself there. But my hope is to jump in with 2 feet and hit the ground running. I certainly think that there is an opportunity for me to be involved in family court at some point. I know that's not a decision that I get to make. Obviously, the chief district court judge will figure out assignments for different courtrooms. But yeah, I'm really hoping to build on some of the things, like you said, that we've already got in place, including things that I really appreciate about some of the other judges doing community outreach projects, bringing kids in, even attorneys in our community who bring kids in from like the Boys and Girls Club, and let them see the court system, and, you know, talk to a deputy and sit in a holding cell, and, you know, go sit on the bench and see what this system is, and really give it some humanity and break it down. And that's a really fun thing to watch, because it takes some of the fear and mystery out of our whole system, I think, and maybe inspire some kids to want to be part of it, the system on this side of it, right? And then, of course, the Guardian Ad Litem program, continuing to work on efforts with kids in our community and wraparound resources, like I said, you know, more things that we can do from that courtroom. I know there's going to be a limit on it. And, of course, the backlog thing is a really big deal for me. And, again, I really don't know how much influence or, you know, sway I can have, but I'm determined to work hard, so at least there's that. I'm dedicated to try to get as much done as I can.
Yeah. And I don't think Cary is unique in its position with having a backlog.
Oh yeah.
So
Wake County, I think everyone knows, is growing by leaps and bounds, and which is great. But it also means that, along with other things like our schools and our roads, you know, our court systems are taxed, and taxed in a time when we don't have the funding that I think we really need, or I think a lot of people think that we need to be able to fully serve this community and the population here. So we're hopeful that there's a change in that also coming along. But in the meantime, you got to work with what you have. So
definitely,
right?
Definitely. You know, and it's interesting to hear you talk about watching the kids come in with the tours, and you're right, it does take away some of that fear, but that's really, like you said, only one part of it, because the other part is, you know, sometimes you build your dreams based on what you see. Absolutely. Because then you start to think, well, gosh, maybe I can be that. That's right. Yeah. And the more kids that I think we have in positions to see things that they might normally see from a good side, from a positive angle, from people who are, you know, interested in helping them grow. Right. I think, you know, it's a whole different way.
It can't hurt, and it's got to be helpful, right?
That's right.
And you know, maybe it's not every kid, but maybe, you know, you make a difference for some. One of the other things that reminded me about is a really good, when we talk about wraparound services, a program that I was involved in somewhat on a limited basis when I was in law school at Campbell. They have a really great juvenile justice clinic there. A guy who runs that, Professor Powell, is very involved in trying to make a difference in our schools, in the communities, actually being invited in to go and help with juvenile offenders who we can actually have sort of a restorative justice process involved there. Talk to your victim on a agreed upon turf, and have a positive conversation around restitution and apologies and that sort of thing, to show someone as a kid what's possible, rather than just having a system that's purely punitive. And that is what a great thing, and I just really believe in that process after seeing so much good come out of it. And I'm a big fan of Professor Powell, so
well, that's good.
It's good work.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that. I'm not sure I want to call it the opportunity. It wasn't necessarily an opportunity, but I was in a position to sort of observe something that you just mentioned. And part of where we are now is based on this philosophy where at one point in time, we implemented all of these, we have a, zero tolerance policy on this,
Right.
And a lot of times it wasn't even something that was very, violent, but and so we elevated sort of the standard of behavior without really elevating the level of education that we were providing to our youth so that they could be able to handle conflict.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, at what point in time do you stop just, doing this with our kids, and you say that I'm actually going to commit to working with them when they do something wrong, and say, hey, well, part of it is we need to sit down and talk to you about how to handle conflict. How do we resolve issues? How do we have face-to-face conversations when we don't agree, instead of yelling or hitting or harassing or whatever it is that we're doing. And then the other side of it is, when you do that wrong thing, how do we have this process where we restore justice? And yes, there may be a punitive side to it.
An aspect of it.
Yes, that's right. But I think the other party a lot of times is thinking, well, I'm going to feel better when this person receives the consequences, from justice. And it's like, well, yeah, that takes care of something, but it might have been better had you had this sort of
it's so interesting. I think about this a lot in the context even with family law, which is a lot of times with folks, maybe some of the hardest times that they're going through in their lives, and there's a lot of emotions involved. And, I've talked with clients many times about, I can't ask the judge to order him to apologize, right? Even though that's really, so many times just, if we would put down this ego and, the walls that are built up, and just say, at the base, we all have a common interest of trying to move forward and help our kids get through this, for instance, right? And so it is, I think, pretty valuable to have someone on the bench, and we do have those kinds of judges on the bench. I'm not saying we don't, who will just kind of break it down and say, look, I see what's going on here and how it's impacting your kids, and I just want to have a candid conversation with you, Mom and Dad, about being the adults in this situation, and understanding that you're hurt, and understanding that you've got feelings, and this ended, yes, but think about your kids, and just trying to have conversations like that, instead of the court system only being about the judicial outcome or the legal outcome. I think it can help, and I've seen it help, actually. So I agree with you. I think that's an important part for us to focus on. And what services are available in the community? If we can suggest to someone, hey, there's a program you can get involved with, or make a referral. Kids that are in the Guardian Ad Litem program, or that are in the program that Guardian Ad Litems are helping with. So many services that are available to be able to help kids like that. Let's make sure we get them involved with those kinds of things, and we don't have kids that are even going through the system that's designed to help them and just going through it without having a good experience and being enriched and a better person for that.
Because even just being in the system
is, it could be a negative, right? If you don't have, and my goodness, I will never be able to keep up with these social workers in Wake County. They are hard workers. They have a lot of cases. They're overworked, underpaid, I'm sure, and a lot of them really, really care. But, you know, they have a lot going on, and so it's easy to forget or let something, you know, fall by the wayside.
Lots of cases also.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So it's helpful to have, you know, volunteers involved from the Guardian Ad Litem program, you know, a court that's going to say, hey, you know, last time we were here, I wanted you to make sure that you got, you know, Jane some winter clothes. What's been going on with that? Does she have what she needs to go to school? Does she have a computer, internet access to do her homework? Just all those kinds of things that are really practical things to think about. When you're a kid and time goes by, time is a whole different thing for kids. You know, we all remember it took years for Christmas to come, right?
That's right. It's like
So
it would
3
never
months
come.
is an eternity for a kid, you know, and you
That's
just,
true.
I need to think in terms of that.
So one of the things that I like to talk to people about is how they're taking care of themselves, because, you know, this can be a process of sorts that's, you know, not just about going out and meeting people and talking to people and shaking hands and telling them about your experience and why you think they should vote for you, but there's also this aspect of trying to do all of that and continue to take care of yourself, and not just your body but your mind also.
Sure.
So tell me a little bit about what's been going on, what you're trying to do.
Sure. Well, you're right, especially you're talking to me and we have 35 days left, but who's counting? As we get into the crunch time here, you know, it really is a you know, down to the wire kind of time frame, and so we're doing a lot, you know, and I'm committed to that, so I know that that's important, but it's not that it's not tiring, and so in a normal circumstance, if there is such a thing, I have really found some help and stress relief and centering around meditation. And that's something that took me a while to say out loud because it sounds a little kooky, I guess. But lots of people, I think, are turning to that as a way to just calm your mind and center your focus. And so even just a 10-minute, you know, we have apps now. You can do everything's on an app, right? So, you know, just 10 minutes a day to sort of breathe and take stock. And I live my life with an attitude of humility and gratitude. That is so important to me. It is so important to me to never forget where I came from. It's so important to me to understand everyone that you meet has a story. Everyone that you meet has gone through something. And you might not be able to relate to that particular thing that they've been through, but we are more alike than we are different. And understanding that when you approach people and talk to them about what they care about or what's, you know, what they see, you know, they're all coming from a perspective of what they've been through. And just really having the patience and thoughtfulness and care to listen. You know, I've said to people, and I've had this happen in my practice too, you know, if you go to the courts and try to get some resolution of some matter, you know, you're going to have a lot more satisfaction with the result if you feel that you were heard, right? That you had your day in court.
That's right.
You might not like the result, right? But at least you got a chance, you know, for the judge to stop and pay attention and listen to what's going on, ask questions, be engaged in your life and the situation of why you're there. And, you know, it's easy, I think, for people to get caught up in, you know, just another number, just another case. And that's so unfortunate. And I'm sure I'm not going to be perfect, but I really hope to strive to be different about that. And make that a priority for me, that every person coming in front of me, this may be the first or only time that they're going to be here. This may be the first of many times that they're going to be here. I might have a difference, you know, ability to make a difference about that. So really just hearing other people's stories and acting with compassion and empathy and coming from a place of humility, I think is really important. So meditating really helps with that. I guess I really should exercise more. The people that know me, other colleagues and stuff, will tell you that this is absolutely true. If you see me running, you should run too, because something is chasing me. I am not a runner. I do not like that. But I do like to get out. You know, like I said, we do. My husband and I like to get out and work in the yard and enjoy fresh air and take walks and stuff like that. So that's just spending time with family too is a really helpful way to stay grounded and to remain in reality. And, you know, dinner still has to be cooked and the laundry still needs to be done. All those great
things.
That's
movement, you know?
Yeah, oh yeah.
If you have stairs in your house and you have to take laundry up and
there
down,
you go.
or you know, whatever.
And little things like that, you can measure the progress, right? I did 2 loads, and that's progress. It's true. So yeah, that's I probably need to come and work out with you. Actually, that's probably what I need to do.
Yeah, and I don't always push it, really hard. There are days when I come in and I'm, and it's just sort of like I just want to get something in,
right?
Because for me, I have to, and so even if it's just a leisurely walk on the treadmill, then I know that I did something that day.
Right, and taking time for yourself. Showing self-care, treating yourself with kindness, right?
Yes,
Treating ourselves with compassion as well, and empathy. Yeah, self-care is important. I will be better at that at some point. 35 days, talk to me after.
Well, but like you talked about the meditation piece, and so we may be calling it meditation, but really some of the other things that we do, that peaceful, late evening walk,
absolutely,
gives our minds a chance to sort of get away from the rest of
absolutely.
the day.
I really enjoy cooking. When I'm in my kitchen, I'm in my element. I love to cook. I love to host and entertain. I love people to enjoy a good meal. And so that's my zone also. Things like that don't sound like very much, but they are.
But they
a way
matter.
to,
they really
absolutely.
do.
A way to just kind of center yourself again. So for sure.
So is there anything else that you would like to share that I didn't mention, or even that you might want to go back to and say, hey, another thought just came, Sheila?
Sure. Well, I do want to make sure if people have stayed with us for this whole interview, which I appreciate, that people do know some logistical information about my race and the election. So like we mentioned, I'm running in Wake County. This is the first year, though, that we have districts in Wake County for these races, for the district court races. And so I am in 10D, like
10D, okay.
And I've actually posted the map on my website because it's pretty confusing. People don't know since it's brand new. So I'd love for people to visit.
And I'm interrupting you, but in addition to running, to just letting people know you are running, you're having to educate them about
on a new district. That, and then, there's been a lot of changes. There's a lot of confusion this year, and so even attorney friends of mine are confused. So nobody needs to feel bad that it's confusing, because it is.
We're all going to learn together.
Exactly. We have partisan races for the first time in decades this year for judges. So even though I strongly believe that there's no place in the courtroom for politics and partisanship, we are being forced to identify the party that we're affiliated with. And then we have the districts, of course. So, if you're not living in the district where I am, my 10D district, then you're not able to vote for me. But I've told people, no matter what color you live in, you know friends, you have other people, acquaintances, and checks are green from every color.
That's right.
So, help out, volunteer, donate, talk to your friends, grassroots support. And then the other thing is, we have 5 of us on the ballot this year for this one seat. We were voting for one person out of 5 because we did not have primaries this year. And so, you have more choices than you might normally expect to see when you go into the to the voting booth on the ballot there. So doing some self-educating, look at some of the things that are out there to learn about who might be more aligned with what you believe in. Will be helpful. I like to tell people also, I know that you mentioned you had interviewed Anita Earls, who's running for Supreme Court, and I have joked with her a couple of times now about how I'm collateral damage of a law that was passed this year making the alphabet begin with F on the ballot for how you're going to see the list of names.
Oh no!
So I will be the last of all 5. So just keep looking down until you get to the bottom.
You can just tell everyone they saved the best for last.
There we go. That's exactly right. Yes. So just keep looking down to the bottom there. I'll be the last out of the 5, but just so people understand and are looking for that, because it's kind of a little bit surprising if you haven't heard about that. So my website's voterebeccaedwards.com, and I have a Facebook page, also Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm learning to do all of these social media outlets. Facebook is at elect Rebecca Edwards. You can find, of course, all of the outlets on our website. I think voterebeccaedwards.com. But Early voting, let's remind everybody, you can get out and avoid the crowd and the chance that you get busy at work or you're not feeling well on election day. Get out and vote. Early vote starts October 17th. You've got 3 weekends in the early voting period. Get out and do it. It doesn't take very long, and it's so important. We as women, it wasn't that long ago that we really were fighting to have the opportunity to vote, and this is something in this country that some of us have died over, right?
We've been fighting for rights for a while.
A little bit, right? And so I just, I like to remind people about that, and I never want to forget that. This is something that we stand on the shoulders of people who came before us to have this privilege, and it is a privilege. And so let's go out and make your voice heard and get out and vote. And November 6th, of course, is Election Day, and it's coming. Did I say 35 days? I did say 35 days. It's coming.
You're counting down to Election Day. I'm counting down until the state fair starts. So
there you go. I know. Well, and I actually was saying to someone, we were talking about self-care. I was talking to someone about, I think November the 7th should be, Wake County-wide spa day for every candidate, regardless of the outcome, right?
That's right.
But I so appreciate you talking with me and having me. And, if people have specific questions, I'm trying to, answer some on my website or Facebook. People are disappointed sometimes that I'm not able to talk about specific fact patterns or specific, cases or things that, how I would rule on something. And obviously, that's because we are bound by the Code of Judicial Conduct and not talking about those things. It is what it is, but I think people can get an idea of who I am by watching a video like this and being able to see, my demeanor and what I care about and what I'm passionate about. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yes. Well, like I said, this is all about #JudgeLove. We are trying to show our judicial candidates some love, give them an opportunity to speak, and for you to learn more about them. So thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
And thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching. Absolutely.
And thank Patrick and Sam for hosting us at Millennium Sports Club in Durham.
Excellent. Thank you so much.